Miss Wood's Spazzy Grammar, commas, Part 2. Introductory phrases. Place a comma after a prepositional phrase of 4 or more words at the beginning of the sentence. Do not use a comma if the prepositional phrase is followed by a verb. Use a comma after a participle phrase at the beginning of a sentence. Let's look at some examples. Number 1. Running as fast as possible, comma. The dog missed the car. This is a participle phrase that starts with the ing word, running as fast as possible, describing the dog. 2. Studying for all my tests is my number 1 priority. Notice this sentence does not have a comma because the ing phrase, studying for all my tests, is followed by a verb, is. Number 3. Before the presidential election, comma, I visited D.C. Adverb clauses and antithetical phrases. Place a comma after an introductory adverb clause. That means that's a clause that comes at the beginning of the sentence. Use commas around antithetical phrases. This is a phrase that states the opposite or uses the words not or unlike. Here's some example sentences. Number 1. Because we are identical twins, comma, people frequently confuse our names. Number 2. Australia, comma, unlike many European nations, comma, is a landlocked country. Notice on number 1, this is an introductory adverb clause where you just put a comma after the phrase at the beginning of the sentence. And on number 2, this is an antithetical phrase starting with unlike. Because it's in the middle of the sentence, you use a comma before and after the phrase. Titles, addresses, and numbers. Use a comma to set off titles when they follow a person's name. For example, Carlos Ramirez, comma, MD, comma, is a pediatrician. Be sure you use a comma before and after that abbreviation. Use commas to separate the parts of an address, including the street, city, and state. But if the state is spelled out, use a comma also after the state. Here's an example. He lives at 1400 Mulberry Road, comma, Huntsville, comma, Alabama, comma, 35804. If Alabama was abbreviated, there would be no comma after it. If you just have city and state, you still place a comma after both when they appear in a sentence. For example, she lives in Huntsville, comma, Alabama, comma, on Montesano Mountain. Also use commas after dates with month, day, and year. If only the month and day, do not use a comma. Here's an example. February 14, 2009, is Valentine's Day. November 20 is my birthday. With month and day, we don't use commas. Also, with month and year, we don't use commas. For example, September 2001 is when 9/11 happened. Finally, use commas to set off page numbers or actor scene numbers. The quote is from Henry Thoreau's Civil Disobedience, page 3. Act 2, scene 3, of the play opens with a busy street scene.